First it was days, then weeks, and now years. The rage virus has now morphed zombies into different types of creatures, from the good old regular skinny running zombies that we saw in the first two films to giant fat worm-like creatures who just slither across the ground looking for an easy meal, to the leaders of the zombies, which are called alphas, who are juiced up muscular monsters with giant hogs, which, thank God they didn't have the alphas talk or ever have the zombies call themselves alphas, because everyone knows the juiced up muscular monsters in real life who call themselves alphas definitely aren't rocking giant hogs. Trust me, I've used a gym bathroom before. It is I, Rafe Goods, back to talk about 28 years later, the Danny Boyle and Alex Garland reunion and a dive back into the 28 franchise. 28 years later is about a 12-year-old boy named Spike whose family lives on a remote island 28 years after the rage virus has rocked the world. Spike's father Jamie is ready to take Spike to the mainland for his first zombie kill and to show him what the world looks like outside of their safe haven, cut off from the rest of the world. But Spike wants to return to the mainland one more time to find an outcast doctor. We are so back. I loved most of this movie. I think it is by far the best of the trilogy, from the cinematography to the use of slow motion, and especially the visuals are far and away the best of all three movies in this franchise. And apparently it was all shot on iPhones and whatever this saw looking contraption is. The movie starts with an opening that more closely follows 28 Weeks Later's opening than that of 28 Days Later's opening, which was interesting considering Danny Boyle uses this movie to retcon 28 Weeks Later out of the timeline. That being said, the opening wasn't bad. It shows a flashback to 2002 when the rage virus first showed up. We are introduced to a kid named Jimmy who runs from the infected to his father as a priest. His father thinks this is the start of the second coming, so he embraces it while Jimmy runs and hides from the murderous zombies chasing him. And then the next time we see Jimmy, he is an adult at the end of the movie, which, based on the ending, which we will get to, I kept thinking that Jimmy was a callback to something in the previous two films I must have missed, but he wasn't. Instead, he ends up being a callback to Jimmy Savile, who was a BBC television host in the 60s, which obviously I didn't get because I live in America and was born in the 90s. But now that I get the reference, it's still a weird choice, but again, we will get to it. After that opening, we are introduced to the current timeline, which is 28 years later, which I'm assuming means this movie takes place in 2030. And that is where we meet 12-year-old Spike, played by Alfie Williams, and his father, Jamie, played by Aaron Taylor Johnson. They live on a tiny isolated island that is connected to the mainland by a sandbar that appears and disappears during high and low tide. A really cool idea that is set up and used to perfection in what I personally think is the best scene in the entire movie. Spike is taken to the mainland by his dad for his first time so he can get his first zombie kill. We meet his bedridden mother, who the whole time I thought was suffering from schizophrenia, but we find out later what she is actually suffering from. But once we leave the house and start on this quest to the mainland, in this sequence we are introduced pretty brilliantly to what the world now looks like 30 years after the rage virus has decimated the world. We have the sandbar at low and high tides explained to us. We see the different breeds of zombies. We find out that zombies themselves are breeding. And we find out that zombies now hunt in herds or are controlled by alpha zombies who are yoked out meatheads with, yes, their undead heads swinging between their legs. A lot of play. You're going to hear a lot about zombie penises. Not from me, but just from fans of this movie or fans of a particular part of this movie. So Spike ends up getting his first zombie kill by killing one of the gross worm-like zombies who crawl on the ground just eating bugs and whatever else is on the ground. But Spike and his dad end up getting chased by the classic skinny rage virus zombies who run and end up in the attic of an old house. And then My favorite scene in the movie happens, which I thought the entire time it was happening was a dream sequence, because the scene is Spike and his dad running back to the island during the transition of the water from high tide to low tide, meaning the water is about ankle high. And as they are doing one of the most thrilling, heart pumping chase scenes you will ever see in a movie and running down the sandbar, they are being chased by an alpha. And the way the night sky is made to look, it's made to look like a beautiful hallucination, or one of those posters they used to hang up in school that just said space and then showed a colorful rendition of the galaxy, which I cannot find an example of that poster that I am thinking of anywhere online. So, is this a Mandela effect thing, or do I have the rage virus and instead of making me mad, it makes me remember fake posters, which would make for a much less interesting trilogy of movies, but I'd probably still watch it if it was directed by Danny Boyle. This is the part of the movie where, after that chase scene, I felt like we had already seen the movie as it was intended. And I felt like, oh, where do we go from here? That was the movie. And then the talk of the mysterious exiled doctor starts up. The kid has a sick mother, Isla, played fantastically by JD Komar. And everyone can start connecting the dots to where the movie goes from here, which, by the way, the trailers completely tricked everyone. After the first probably 40 minutes of the movie, we don't see Aaron Taylor Johnson's character until the end of the movie, which I'm not complaining about. It was just a nice little like bait and switch from the trailers and marketing, which, the way people complain about how movie trailers give everything away, every movie should do this. Just completely misrepresent what the movie is about to get people in the theaters, because lying to your customers has never came back to hurt anyone ever in the history of capitalism, right? So once Spike and his mom are on the mainland, this is where my issues with the movie start, because we just saw how dangerous the mainland was for Spike, who, when the time called for it, was too scared to shoot a bow and arrow when being chased by the fast zombies. But we also saw how dangerous it was for the Jamie character, despite being a healthy, well bodied adult. Now we have the 12-year-old and his sick mother, who are walking way farther into the mainland than Spike and his father ever went, and it felt way less dangerous. Now, obviously, that changes with the rest of the movie and they have to be saved two separate times. But Spike and his father were only on the mainland for a couple hours and felt like they were in constant danger for the majority of the time they were there. But Spike and his sick mom are on the mainland for what feels like days and rarely come face to face with really any obstacles. It's just weird to encounter so much danger the first time to only be more vulnerable the second time and feel like the journey is somehow less dangerous. I don't have many nitpicks with this movie, but that was one of them that kind of stuck out to me. But then the saving grace of the movie was the introduction of two characters, one being Ray Fiennes as Dr. Kelso, and the other being Edwin Writing as Eric, who comes into the movie and provides some much needed levity at just the right moment of a movie that felt like it needed a little levity. It's very similar to 28 Days Later in that retrospect, when Brendan Gleeson enters that movie and adds a little optimism to a movie that up to that point in the movie felt so dire. Edwin Writing's character comes into the movie as an army guy from Sweden with an iPhone, which didn't exist in 2002. So I love the idea that the rest of the world is just chugging along like normal, and only the UK is now 30 years into a zombie virus outbreak that never spread to the outside world. I have seen people tying meaningful political meanings to this realization, but to me, it's much funnier at face value of just the rest of the world just saying, F that, we aren't helping them. They have zombies. Ray Fiennes might be my favorite actor. I love him in every role I've ever seen him in, and this movie is no exception. We are introduced to Ray Fiennes, aka Dr. Kelso, in a story told to Spike by his father, where we see a flashback of Jamie and some other people from the island coming across the doctor on the mainland as he is lining up dead bodies in rows. He waves at them, and Jamie and the others run from him and haven't come across the doctor again in 13 years, or have avoided him for 13 years, which leads to Spike venturing out in search of the doctor to help his mother. And when they finally encounter him, he's like absolutely delightful. And he just so happens to live among the infected, covering himself in iodine because he thinks it slows the spread. What I actually thought was really smart was how the movie showed the different ways the people in the world view the infected now. Jamie views them as a nuisance you should avoid. Spike views them as something you should fear. And then Dr. Kelso views them as still people you should respect. I thought that was an interesting framing device, and it's of course not true across the board, because obviously at certain points during the movie, all of them just view the infected as threats or something to be scared of, as really anyone would when an animal is just around you compared to when it's trying to eat or attack you. But I found that little detail to be a really interesting way to make the world feel lived in for 30 years. The use of the skulls and that dark red color that we associate with the other films, then being associated in this one with Ray Fiennes in the trailer, was probably my favorite bait and switch when it came to the marketing, because Dr. Kelso is revealed to be the one who built those like skull mountains and skull tributes, but not as anything nefarious, but as a tribute to anyone who has died so that they can be remembered. It's a really weirdly beautiful speech and scene when Spike finds out his mother has cancer and could go at any moment. So Dr. Kelso gives her the option to go out on her own terms. And then they have a scene that, me just saying it is going to sound really weird and creepy, but the way the movie does it is really touching. And I'm man enough to admit, made me shed real tears, where Dr. Kelso hands Spike his mother's skull and has him put her skull in the most special place on the skull tower, which is obviously the top. And then the kid does it and turns her so she is pointing towards where she can see the sunrise. It was very touching in the weirdest way possible. And again, made me cry real tears when the scene of a son holding his mother's skull and pointing her towards the sunset makes you cry real tears. That's a good movie. So right after that scene, I thought the movie had much longer to go at that point. So I went to the little man's room right after that. So I don't know what happened to the baby. I still don't know. I don't understand how the infected still bang and have babies. But then again, I don't get what any of the infected eat, because they appear to just spit blood on someone else and then don't eat them, because then those people become infected. But they are also fast enough to catch animals apparently and eat them, or the alpha just rips people's heads off and then they all eat that body. I don't know. I thought the 28 weeks later explanation of these things starved to death in a month and all die out made a lot more sense, but apparently that's not canon anymore. But it's a movie, so do I really care? No. But multiple times in these movies, I just keep asking myself, what do they eat? And now all of a sudden they're banging and making babies? Like, how? Now, obviously, I can't talk about everything in the movie, but just little things. I didn't like the cutting in with scenes of archers and old movies and how artsy this movie was at first, but it kind of grew on me. The only thing that did not grow on me was that ending. We see a group dressed like Jimmy Seville in different colored jumpsuits and blonde wigs that help Spike kill a bunch of zombies in weird and interesting ways. And then the leader says, "I'm Jimmy," as if he is being introduced in a new Marvel movie as some beloved character. And then the movie just ends. There was a loud, audible groan at that ending in my theater. And for me personally, it definitely made the movie end on the opposite of a high note. The callback was to the kid at the beginning of the movie that was Jimmy, but why do we care about him? We spent 3 minutes 2 hours ago with this guy. So now all of a sudden he's introduced as Jimmy, and the whole audience is just supposed to stand up and clap or gasp and be like, "Oh my god, that's the little kid from the 3-minute opening 2 hours ago." Like, we already have a new kid we're invested with, the kid we've been with for 2 hours. It just felt like such a weird, like, bookend to a movie. Like, where you just go where everybody's just supposed to stand up and applaud and be like, "Oh my god, that's Jimmy?" All that being said, I had a great time. Zombies are back, baby, and I enjoyed it. Go see this movie if you like good movies, good gore, beautiful cinematography, and undead dicks or fresh hot skulls.